for the racism which apparently was aimed at Meghan Markle, which is just completely absurd. But by far the most sickening part of this show for me was the constant use of Harry's late mother, Princess Diana, to stoke sympathy for Meghan.
The world's most divisive woman is coming apart at the seams, and one man saw this whole disaster coming before anyone else. The man who was fired from one of the biggest jobs in British television for daring to say it out loud. He is watching it all play out exactly as he predicted. That man is Piers Morgan, and you just cannot ignore this. Every single thing he warned us about is happening right now, and all at the very same time. Today we're breaking it down. The 10 shocking truths Piers Morgan has been shouting into the wind for 5 straight years, the truths that cost him dearly. His career, the truths that the mainstream media openly mocked, the truths that are now one by one being proven right. In the most spectacular public and permanent way imaginable. Stick with me all the way to the #1 spot, because that last one is going to completely change how you view this entire saga. Let's dive in. Truth 10. The contradiction she cannot explain. We're starting here because this is when the cracks began to show in plain sight for millions to see. People watched it happen live. Just weeks ago, Meghan sat down with her close friend Jamie Kern-Lima, complete with rocking chairs. No makeup, soft lighting, the entire setup was designed to scream, "This is the real me." She looked right down that camera lens, and she told the world she was living the happiest, most fulfilled life she had ever known. Those were her exact words. She raved about her beautiful children, her thriving marriage, and her incredible life in California. She even compared Harry to a Super Mario Bros. Hero, her protector, her champion, her everything. Remember that, because the timing here is critical. It matters so much. Then on April 25th, just weeks later, she posted something for her 4.5 million followers. That sent the entire internet into a complete frenzy. She shared a quote about ending the hardest 7 years of your life. She shared that quote twice, on the same day. Piers Morgan reacted within hours, and the first thing he did was count, backwards. 7 years from April 2025 lands you squarely in 2018. Her wedding year, the year she married Prince Harry. The year she joined the most famous family on earth. So is that a coincidence Piers Morgan absolutely doesn't believe in them? Not when it comes to Meghan Markle. He never has. He has stated over and over again, and with total conviction, that this woman communicates in layers. Everything is deniable, everything has a point, and nothing is ever an accident. So let me ask you a question directly. How do you go from claiming the happiest life ever to the hardest 7 years of your life, all in the span of just 3 weeks? Which version of Meghan Markle are we actually supposed to believe? Because both of those statements cannot be true at the same time. They can't even coexist in the same reality. And this is where Piers has always started his argument. Not with bitter accusations, not with personal attacks, but with the most basic question a journalist can ask. Do the facts actually line up? And the answer time and time again is no. Truth 9, the Queen who never was. Here is something that Piers Morgan has been hammering home for 5 years that somehow gets ignored every single time a new drama kicks off. Meghan Markle is not a queen. She walked away from the royal family in January 2020. She and Harry made that decision publicly, dramatically, and permanently. They left the firm. They rejected all the duties. They stepped back from their roles. And yet, and this is the part that sends Piers into a genuine rage, she has spent every year since then carefully and methodically surrounding herself with people who treat her just like one, a loss. Vegas astrologer who calls herself a ride or die astrologer for, quote, hot mess people recently posted all about. Meghan using the phrase, "Here's to reigning again, capital R, capital Q Queen." And when that astrologer's post went viral, she was ecstatic that Meghan had shared her content. Just think what that tells you about the bubble Meghan has built for herself. The people in her inner circle, the people she promotes, the voices she amplifies, they are the ones who call her royalty. They are the ones whispering that the universe owes her a huge comeback. They're the ones keeping an identity alive that she technically surrendered the moment she moved to California. And Piers has called that podcast moment where she described herself as a princess on air one of the most revealing things she has ever done. She told little girls she was a real princess. She isn't a princess. She knows she is not a princess, but she said it anyway because her brand requires it. The commercial value depends on it. And this brings us to Piers Morgan's core argument, the one he has never ever backed down from. You cannot hold the crown and the victim card at the same time. You can't just walk away from an institution, publicly trash it, make millions from trashing it, and then still trade on its name and its imagery to sell your own candles and jam. You pick one. Meghan has spent 7 years refusing to pick, and the public on both sides of the Atlantic is getting seriously tired of watching her try. Truth ate the Serena Williams debacle that nobody saw coming. We're now at the moment that Piers Morgan described as one of the most unintentionally. We are revealing some of the biggest PR disasters in the history of modern celebrity branding. And believe me, you really need to understand the full picture. The surface story here is embarrassing enough, but what is lurking underneath it all is genuinely damning. Lead us to Meghan. Oh, could it be because she married a British prince and then dragged him completely out of his country and off to a California mansion? Then Meghan launched her Mother's Day collection. We are talking about a £64 candle and £42 gourmet chocolates in a powder blue box. A lifestyle brand presenting itself as pure aspirational luxury. For the sophisticated modern woman, she sent a PR package to her most famous and most loyal ally in the entire world, Serena Williams. Now, when your best friend and most high-profile supporter agrees to unbox your new product on camera for millions of her followers that is supposed to be a slam dunk, that should be the easiest, most flattering piece of organic promotion that money simply cannot buy. Serena Williams unboxing your brand should have been the moment your lifestyle empire announces its arrival to the world, but what actually happened was something else entirely. Serena opened the box. The chocolates arrived totally smashed, all broken and stuck together. She looked right at them on camera, and the expression on her face said everything that her actual words were trying so very hard not to say. Then, and this is the detail that made the entire thing go viral, Serena admitted on camera that she doesn't even like chocolate. Still, she tried one anyway and said they were beautiful while obviously struggling. Then came the candles that are according to Meghan, inspired by her very own children's birthdays. Serena attempted to read the scent notes aloud. She simply could not pronounce them multiple ones in a row. She ended the video with, "Looks good. I love you, Meghan." That video went viral within the hour. Piers Morgan's verdict was immediate and completely unsparing. When your closest, most famous ally in the world cannot pronounce your product while she is actively trying to sell it for you, that is not a bad PR day. That is the very end of a brand. And the hard facts sitting behind that viral moment only make it much worse. On Meghan's luxury clothing resale platform, she had sold a grand total of 8 items of clothing. 8. Some customers even received candles with no wicks inside. The original jam launched the grand debut of her entire lifestyle empire, actually saw labels peeling off jars before they even reached the people who had bought them. A woman who once held a $100 million Netflix deal and a $20 million Spotify contract. The most recognizable name on the entire planet for a solid 3-year window. And the commercial reality she has built from. All of that fame is broken chocolates, wickless candles, and 8 clothing sales. Nobody is buying it, and I mean that literally. Truth 7, the Ukraine speech that crossed a completely uncrossable line. This one is very different from the others. This one is Not about branding or contradictions or some viral disasters. This one is all about power. Who has it, who doesn't, and just what happens when you use a title you have abandoned to wade into geopolitics on the global stage Harry travelled to. Ukraine as a private citizen, with no mandate from Britain, no official role at all, no authority from the palace or the government or anyone else. He sat down alongside heads of government and former prime ministers and gave a big speech calling for American leadership on Ukraine, a speech that directly contradicted Donald Trump's own publicly stated position on the ongoing conflict. Piers Morgan called it infantile. He called it totally immature. He called it wildly irresponsible. And the response from the White House quickly confirmed that the speech had landed exactly as badly as Piers had predicted. Trump was asked about it publicly, and he responded pointedly that Prince Harry is definitely not speaking for the United Kingdom. But here is where the story gets genuinely serious. Because while Harry was giving that speech from Kiev, telling the world this was precisely what he was born to do, King Charles was preparing for the most important diplomatic moment of his entire reign, his historic address to the United States Congress, a moment of true global significance that required precision, extremely careful diplomacy, and absolute political neutrality. Harry's speech dropped just 4 days before King. Charles stood at that very podium. The palace was furious, the British government was also furious, and when you understand the context, a non-working royal stripped of his official duties by his own choice, freelancing on geopolitics and using the leverage of a title he already walked away from, you begin to understand precisely why the fury was not just political, it was deeply personal. Piers has said it very simply: you cannot just freelance on the back of a title you have abandoned. You made the choice to leave. You made the very conscious choice to step back from all royal duties. You do not get to invoke that identity when it's convenient for your global profile and just discard it when it requires actual obligation. The palace saw it the exact same way, and what came next was the clearest signal we have seen yet that the relationship between Harry and his family has crossed a threshold from which there may be no return. Truth number 6, the King's very public snub that spoke much louder than any statement. Pay very close attention, because this is the kind of moment that flies by in seconds but carries the weight of a final verdict. During King Charles's address to Congress, one of the most watched and reported on royal events of the decade, holding a person at Buckingham Palace until my safe return was mentioned, the King spoke about American cities that bear the names of his own family members. He mentioned Charleston, which was named after King Charles II. He mentioned Williamsburg, named for King William. But he never once said Harry on the biggest stage of his reign in front of the President of the United States and Congress. He was listing all the ways that his family's history is woven into the very fabric of America. He left his own second son off the list entirely. Piers Morgan saw it instantly. He called the move deliberate, public, and absolutely unmistakable. Not an oversight, not an editing choice. It was a signal, a clear, cold, calculated signal delivered in the most public way in the world to an audience of hundreds of millions that can't be taken back or explained away. Now compare that with what happened to Prince Andrew. Charles stripped his brother of every single title, every patronage, every official connection, and even his home. He did it all very quietly. He did it completely. And sources close to Charles are now telling Piers Morgan that the big question being asked inside the palace is if Harry will be next. Charles is apparently wrestling with what those around him are calling the nuclear option, doing to Harry precisely what he did to Andrew, taking his titles, ending his official connection to the royal family completely. And here is the argument Piers makes that should genuinely scare Harry's team. Andrew disgraced himself, but he never publicly went after the family. He never wrote a memoir that dismantled the institution from within. He never gave Oprah Winfrey 2 hours to detail everything he thought was broken about, the people he grew up with. He did not do a Netflix special. He did not use 400 pages of his own book to describe the royal family as cold, cruel, and impossible. Harry did every single one of those things, so if Charles stripped Andrew for what he did, what logic could possibly stop him from doing the same to Harry for what Harry did? The question is no longer if this is even possible. The question from people close to the king is whether it is simply inevitable. Truth 5, the Friendship Playbook. Let's talk about the people who have been cut out of Meghan's life not as mere gossip, but as a distinct pattern. Piers Morgan has always said that the most revealing thing about a public figure isn't who they surround themselves with. It is who they have systematically removed. And when you actually look at the list of people who were close to Meghan Markle, truly close, not just for PR, and then you look at what happened to them all, the pattern becomes impossible to just ignore. Her entire family on her father's side is gone. Her father himself, a man who famously staged paparazzi photos, has been completely cut off from her since. Friends she called lifelong advisors who worked closely beside her during her first years at the palace. Multiple staff members left under circumstances that led to a formal bullying inquiry from the palace itself. The former Communications Secretary Jason Knauf put his concerns in writing a black and white email to his superior, describing a clear pattern of behaviour towards staff. He used specific language about staff being bullied out of their roles and their confidence being systematically destroyed. That is not an anonymous source. That is a named individual with documented proof. Piers has said this clearly without any hesitation. A woman who has removed nearly everyone who ever challenged her, who has cut off her own family members one by one, who created a formal workplace investigation at Kensington Palace, is in absolutely no position to be hosting a podcast about the art of friendship and human connection. She just launched content about how to be a better friend. Piers's reaction to this was immediate and characteristically blunt, as one of the many people she cut out. Spectacularly, the moment she got some royal traction along with her whole family on both sides, he said he doesn't believe Meghan Markle is in any position to be lecturing the public about friendship. Her audience has started to agree. Truth 4, the visa time bomb. This is what Piers Morgan calls the quiet danger, the one that is not generating the most headlines right now, but that, in his view, carries the most genuinely serious long-term consequences of anything in this entire affair. The Heritage Foundation, which is Washington's most powerful conservative think tank, has been fighting in federal court to get Harry's US immigration records. The Harry and Meghan debacle arrived in Germany today after a whirlwind tour of the UK, during which they didn't find the time to meet any of their family. The reason is simple, and it comes straight from Harry's own memoir, Spare, published under his own name for the whole world to read. Harry openly admitted to using cocaine, cannabis, psychedelic mushrooms and ayahuasca on a US visa application. Hiding prior drug use is not a technicality. It is not a minor paperwork mistake that you can just clear up later. It is a federal offence that is grounds for deportation. The Heritage Foundation's own lawyer stated plainly in open court, if he lied, that gets you deported. People get deported for lying on immigration forms all the time. These are not theoretical consequences. They are applied regularly to people with far less of a public profile than Harry. The Department of Homeland Security fought to keep these documents sealed for 2 entire years. A federal judge ordered them released. They arrived at 82 pages long, and more than half was completely redacted. Think about that. 82 pages of immigration papers and over half is blacked out. What is on those pages, what is being protected, and from whom under this administration with Trump's Department of Homeland Security in charge, and to put it mildly, zero goodwill toward the Sussex household. Piers Morgan says this case is far from finished. He has said on air with his usual understatement that there may be trouble ahead. He is not overstating this. This is not a tabloid story. This is an active federal court case with a named attorney, a named petitioner, and admissions documented in Harry's own published words. The clock on this is still ticking. Truth 3, the financial reckoning that's approaching at speed. Piers Morgan has always said the money would be the one truth that mattered. Not the titles, not the drama, not the interviews, the money. This week, that picture came into sharper focus than at any point since they departed the UK. Financial experts close to this story are now giving Harry and Meghan roughly 5 years before they face what one source described as a reckoning they cannot style their way out of. Princess Diana's inheritance, according to reports close to the family, is largely gone. The inheritance Harry received from the Queen Mother when he turned 40 is reportedly disappearing. Fast given what the couple spends every month. Now, consider what they are actually living on. The Netflix deal is up, Spotify is done, the Archewell lifestyle brand is not performing at anywhere near the level required to sustain their current lifestyle. The Invictus Foundation is a charitable vehicle, not a personal revenue stream, and here is the detail that has become a quiet punchline among people who live in and around Montecito, one of the wealthiest zip codes in America. When you buy a $14 million house in that community, you renovate it. That is not a flex. It is simply what is done. You spend another $7 or $8 million bringing it up to the standard the neighbourhood expects. Harry and Meghan moved into their mansion as they found it, a property last properly updated by a Russian billionaire 15 years ago. In Montecito, that is a financial signal, and the people who live around them can read it very clearly. They are described by those in that community as the poorest rich people in the room, and not in a charming, understated way. In a way that speaks to the reality of what happens when you spend your capital instead of investing it. 5 years of reserves before a lifestyle change becomes unavoidable. That is the estimate, and not one of their current. Revenue Streams is performing at the level required to push that timeline out. Piers Morgan has always said when the money ends, the real story begins. The real story is beginning now. Truth 2, the bullying files and the institution that fought back. Let's not let this one get buried beneath all the lifestyle brand coverage, because it is arguably the most institutionally serious allegation that has ever been attached to Meghan's name, and it has never been properly resolved. In 2021, Kensington Palace announced it was launching a formal investigation into bullying allegations made against Meghan by multiple members of staff. This was not a tabloid story. This was the palace, itself an institution that goes to extraordinary lengths to avoid public conflict, announcing publicly that it had received enough credible information to warrant a formal inquiry. The timing of that announcement was very notable. It came just days before the Oprah interview aired. The palace made it clear that staff members had come forward and that documented communications existed and that the matter would be investigated. The investigation's findings were never publicly released. The palace said the findings would remain confidential. Meghan's team called it a smear campaign, timed to damage her before the interview, but Jason Knauf went on the record. His emails exist in black and white. His language was specific, measured and professional, describing a pattern of behaviour that had caused serious harm to people working in close proximity to the Duchess. 2 people were specifically described as having been bullied out of their jobs. This is documented. This is named. This is not a rumour. Piers Morgan has returned to this point many times. For a simple reason, an institution built to protect the monarchy above all else decided that these allegations were serious enough for a public announcement, and that is not nothing. That is the absolute opposite of nothing. And when you add that formal inquiry next to the long trail of cut-off friends, estranged family members and advisors who walked away, a pattern that stretches back years well before she ever joined the royal family. You're not looking at a series of unfortunate coincidences. You're looking at a consistent documented record, the one Piers Morgan has been citing and sourcing, and standing behind for 5 years. Truth number one, the one truth you simply can't recover from. And so, here we are. Number 1, the truth. Piers Morgan spotted the moment Meghan first sat down with Oprah Winfrey. The very truth he stated so plainly and so directly that it cost him one of the biggest jobs in all of British broadcasting. I'm actually genuinely curious, are there any fans of Meghan Markle in tonight? The truth that 40,000 people filed formal complaints about. The truth that Meghan herself filed her own personal complaint against him over. The truth he refused to retract despite losing his livelihood for it. He said, "I do not believe her." Not, "I disagree with her characterization." Not, "I think some details might need clarification." He said, "I wouldn't believe her if she read me a weather report." That was in 2021. Now, just look at this week alone. She told the world she was the happiest she had ever been. Then she told the world these were the hardest 7 years of her life. She told Australian schoolchildren she was the most trolled person on the entire planet for 10 years in a row. She told her followers she is ready to reign again. And she told Harry's family, through Oprah, through Netflix, and through 400 pages of a memoir, that they were cold, cruel, and completely impossible. Ask yourself the question Piers has always asked. How? Many of those statements can possibly be true at once, not whether they sound compelling and not whether they are. Emotionally delivered, but whether they are actually true, whether they coexist with one another or collapse against each other. The second you place them side by side, they collapse completely. Piers Morgan has always said the real core problem is not that Meghan tells obvious, provable lies. The core problem is she has never truly decided who she actually is. Is she a victim or a victor, a duchess or a celebrity, a devoted mother or a global brand, the happiest she has ever been, or just barely surviving an institution's greatest asset or its most damaged survivor? She keeps on trying to be. All of them at once, grabbing for whichever identity serves the particular moment she's in. And what this week has. Proven beyond the broken chocolates, the viral unboxing, the Instagram reposts, the Ukraine speech, and the financial reports and the federal court cases, that while her new podcast Archetypes topped the Spotify charts all around the world, the audience has finally stopped being willing to follow her through the contradictions. Piers Morgan paid a massive professional price for saying 5 years ago what most people are now openly saying for themselves. He didn't wait for public opinion. He stated his position and defended it under extraordinary pressure and walked away from a career that most people would have protected at all costs rather than surrender his right to say it. And here's the final thing worth saying. Not everything in this entire story is finished. Harry's visa situation is ongoing. The title question within the palace is still unresolved. Their financial runway is getting narrower, but it has not run out. There is still time for things to change, for decisions to be made for either Harry or Meghan to choose a completely different path. But what can't be undone is the credibility. Once an audience stops believing you, and I mean really stops, not as a tabloid game, but as a gut-level, repeated, documented conclusion, you do not win that back with a new podcast, a lifestyle rebrand, or a rocking chair interview with a friend. Piers Morgan was right. He said it. He paid the price for saying it. And now the rest of the world is just catching up. That is the full picture. 10 truths, 5 years in the making, all landing in one incredible week. Let me know in the comments which of these 10 truths you think matters the most, and whether you believe there is any path back from here for either Harry or Meghan. If this video gave you something to really think about, hit that like button, and Subscribe. We cover the stories behind the headlines with the context that actually matters. And go check out the video on your screen right now, because it covers the single part of this story that almost nobody is talking about yet. You are definitely going to want to see it.